Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 359 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Renna. The show notes are located at continuefit.com or strengthcoachpodcast.com. All right, we kind of got a combined segments today. The strengthcoach.com and mbsc.tv Coaches Corner is combined with the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment. I just really have on Coach Boyle today, and we're going to talk about the release of the second edition of Designing Strength Training Programs and Facilities. We're going to go over why this book is the book that Coach Boyle always wanted to write, how he kind of started to really understand where he made the most impact, why the whole thing, he says it's not about the program, it's more about the coaching. And even though this is a program book, so we're going to kind of go over that. We'll talk about all the different changes he's made in his facility, especially the ones since COVID, and as well as all the programming changes he's made since the first edition came out in 2005. So lots of changes. So kind of like I said, combine that with the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, which is normally brought to you by AG1 by Athletic Greens. So don't forget, I use it every day. I just took it actually before this. I'm starting to use it in the afternoon as a pre-workout drink. So working well for me at that time. So you'll get a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/strength coach. We also have the Naamly Maximizing the Member Experience with Sumit Seth. Sumi's the founder of Naamly. Today he's going to talk about this idea about the customer is always right. It's something that's been ingrained in him from his first job, and it's something really ingrained with Naamly, but he's going to also challenge it sometimes. Sometimes they're not right, and what you can do maybe when they're not, and maybe kind of look at that interaction, and maybe there was some miscommunication there. So some really good stuff, as always, coming up from Sumi. Naamly, they help you build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Guys, go to naamly.com, NAAMLY.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what it's all about. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on your free 30-day trial. Right now at Perform Better, there's the online sale, 50% off. So much stuff, guys, including bumper plates, kettlebells, dumbbells, lots of other stuff. You got to go to performbetter.com to check it all out. Also, the summit dates and presenters for Orlando, Chicago, Long Beach, and Providence are set. You can take advantage of all the early bird specials and the hotel discounts at each location. Listen to the last episode, 358.5, I had on Chris Poirier to talk about everything that's happening this year. And something that really came up that actually I didn't know. If you're having some financial trouble, and this is why I love Perform Better, call Perform Better. Let them know your situation. They'll work something out with you. Let's say you can only go for a day. You can only afford a day. They'll work something out with you. Their motto is that they don't want to turn anyone away. Their mission is to get trainers educated as best as possible. Don't let the cost hold you back. They will work something out with you. Check it all out at performbetter.com. If you're having problems, give them a call. Lots of things to get to, so we're going to start out with Sumi this time. So let's get on the phone with Sumit Seth.
Welcome to Naamly's Maximizing the Member Experience segment. My name is Sumit Seth, and I'm the co-founder of Naamly. I'm a huge advocate for customer experience. Heck, that's literally the theme and title of this entire segment and what Naamly's, our company's claim to fame is. However, today, we're going to challenge the popular notion of the customer is always right. When I was getting started in my career, my supervisor shared with me during my induction that there were only 2 rules. The customer is always right, and when in doubt, refer back to rule number 1. So when I say this notion has been distilled into me, I mean it is part of every fabric of my being. Like I said, it's the principle our company thrives on. However, while it's crucial to value and respect our customers, they can be mistaken, misinformed, or even be unreasonable at times. Despite a business's best efforts, it's impossible to cater to every individual's whim or desire. There may be limitations in resources, time, or even the nature of the product or service being provided. Recognizing these limitations and setting realistic expectations is crucial for a healthy customer business relationship. Having said that, it's equally important to note that dismissing the customer's concern is not the solution. So, what do we do when the customer isn't right? One, focus on compassion. Sometimes when the customer is upset, they just want to be heard. Let them vent. And more importantly, be in the state of active listening to show you care about their concern, even if you don't agree with it being valid. Number two, dig into the problem. Gain a deep understanding of the underlying issue. To do that, engage in open and constructive communication. Often, customers have a clear vision of their needs, but the demands may stem from incorrect information. Therefore, it is crucial to identify the source of that misinformation and explore alternative solutions. Additionally, there is a possibility that we, as providers, may have been responsible and the source for providing said inaccurate information. In such case, it's important to just acknowledge our mistake, offer apologies, and promptly address the problem at hand. Number three, be kind. At times, the best thing to do is politely and gently tell the customer they're mistaken. Make sure in times like these that you demonstrate patience and kindness and avoid shame and guilt. Number four, stand up. If a customer becomes aggressive towards you or your staff, it is essential to take a leadership stance. Efforts should be made to de-escalate the situation while firmly communicating that such behavior is unacceptable. In order to uphold our integrity, safeguard the well-being of our staff, and maintaining a commitment to delivering exceptional services to other customers, our community, we must be prepared to terminate the relationship if necessary. Make no mistake, this is not easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Blindly adhering to the notion that customer is always right can have negative consequences for the team, other customers, and even your own well-being. Build a culture where everyone understands that while customers' opinion and feedback are valuable, it's not always correct. Till next time, this is Sumit Seth, co-founder of Naamly. As you marinate on this notion, I would invite you to check out Naamly, get started on a true 30 days, no strings attached trial, and discover for yourself how we can help in providing that delicate balance between customer delight and the realities of running your business. Make sure to use the referral code StrengthCoach.
All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and NBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Guys, you can try StrengthCoach.com out for 7 days for free. Same great forum as always. It's really, we talked about this last time, but it's really been kicking in lately, kind of getting to where it should be. It's taken a little while, but it's really rolling right now. So go to StrengthCoach.com to get your free 7-day trial. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just thinking about last time when I almost went in without saying how you doing, and would have broke a long tradition.
I was going to say it would have been a streak of like 300 podcasts, however many we're at.
Yeah,
So.
we're at like 350. Guys, we are here. And what's going on here? Oh, because of the green screen. Designing, I'm going in and out. Designing training facilities, strength training programs and facilities. 2nd edition, guys. So, which is pretty exciting. So, Coach, I want to talk to you all about what's new, really, right? About what's different in this book, because a lot of people might see this. Hey, it's called the same thing, but it is the 2nd edition. And Coach, when was the first one done?
First one was 2005, believe it or not.
Wow.
And it was really much like functional training for sports when I did new functional training for sports in 2016. It was really hopelessly out of date. When you look at the stuff that was in there, you thought, wow. You have those same, can't believe I said that kind of moments. So one of the things when I redid functional training for sports, human kinetics had said, and I have no idea where this stipulation comes from, but they said if you rewrite more than half the book, it becomes theoretically a new book. And so this one, I would think I probably rewrote more than half. I think the bones of it stay the same as the original book. So someone who had read the original 2005 book might recognize it and say, yeah, it's sort of the same flow, but it's really all the updates. It's sprinting and trap bar deadlifts. There's so much stuff that we're doing differently now. Trap bar jumps. There's just a ton of stuff that's different. And as I said, and you kind of alluded to it in the beginning, when I wrote functional training for sports, human kinetics had an idea of what they wanted. And they said, I want a book that a kid can read, a parent can read, a physical therapist can read, an athletic trainer can read, a strength coach can read, a personal trainer can read. And I wrote with that vision in mind. So as the book was still really successful, but I didn't really write it for coaches. And then with this book, I wrote it much more geared to what I felt were people like me, people that were, so it really would be more strength coaches and personal trainers than it would be anybody else. I don't know. Maybe a parent wouldn't find this book as interesting. Maybe a kid wouldn't pick up this book and find it as interesting. But I think people that are really into the field will really find it interesting. And then I sort of spruced it up with, much like I did with Advances in Functional Training. I took a lot of the stuff that I'd written since Advances in Functional Training that didn't really fit into functional training for sports. And I kind of worked that into the introductory part of this book, more of the personal stuff that I probably haven't shared in my writings as much, or at least in my books as much. So I kind of wrote about some things about how I got there, my feelings about coaching and some of those other things. So I really like this book. If you ask me, of all of the books I've written, this is the one I like the most.
Yeah, Coach, it's interesting though, because obviously you start out, in this field, you want to help a lot of people. And if we really look at the direction that you went, you still train people, obviously, but the direction was training the trainer. You really got into that. I mean, this book was 2005 because functional training for sports was first, but then there's StrengthCoach.com. Then there's, at the time, bodybyboyleonline.com, which is mbsc.tv now. Obviously, all the lectures, right, to perform better, and all of the conferences, and really, when you look at StrengthCoach.com too, and now even Twitter, Twitter's free. But you just love that conversation. I feel like that's the why behind what you do more than training athletes.
I think so, because I wanted to have a bigger impact. And I forget the book, but somebody whose book that I read basically said that your income and effect on the world will be based on the number of people that you impact. And he used the idea, people always complain about teachers don't make enough money. And he said, well, a teacher has a classroom of maybe 20 or 30 kids. That's how many kids they're impacting. He said, if you really want impact on a really big scale, you've got to affect more people. And that's when I started to realize that writing and speaking and DVDs and all this stuff would allow me to impact more people. But I never envisioned the scope of it. I never thought that it would become international. I never thought when I wrote these books, I never said, wow, they'll be translated. I mean, functional training for sports, I can't even tell you how many languages it's in, but I know it's probably at least a dozen. I could probably name a dozen off the top of my head. And people continue to translate that book. I hope this book gets translated into as many languages, because now we're impacting coaches and trainers literally all over the world. I think if you look right now, it's probably Russian and Hindi are the two really big languages that we haven't hit. And we've hit everything else, Chinese, we've hit, Spanish, French. I mean, just,
Portuguese.
yeah, Portuguese. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And so I think I found that if I did want to be effective, the scale had to be bigger.
Absolutely. I mean, I think too, we didn't even mention really Thrive, right? So one of your businesses for 10, 12, 13 years now has been MBSC Thrive, right? And that really is a product, to be honest, of designing strength training programs and facilities, because that's when you really started talking about, hey, it's not just the program. What about where you're training? Because you were getting so many questions. I remember even, especially after this book came out, one of the things we did was we gave away a copy of this book after a few years when you signed up to strengthcoach.com.
Yeah.
And the PDF. And so a lot of people always had those questions about designing and what equipment should I get. And so really it kind of has really evolved, and CSFC has kind of become that piece as well.
Yeah, I think we became, maybe unintentionally, the systems people, whether it was facility systems or program design systems. We really started to make these things literally systematic. Hey, this is how you set up the facility. This is how you set up the program. And obviously, the space has to fit the program. So we have an idea about how we want to program. And then we in turn say, based on how we want to program, this is how the space should be set up. That's really what Thrive is really about. MBSC Thrive is about facility design. Bruce Mack, who's one of my partners in that venture, saw what we were doing and thought, wow, this would be really helpful in more of a health club environment, or trying to help people to design their facilities so that it's efficient. Because again, what you realize is we can get in our own way in terms of our ability to make money because we don't design the facility well. It's really easy. Personal training, you got a couple hundred square feet, you're in there with one person, you have no problem. You can pretty much do what you want when you want because you're not competing with anybody else. But then as you scale up, even two people suddenly say, hey, I've got a 400 square foot studio. Now there's two of us. Now we have to figure out who gets to use what and who's going to warm up where. And then we go to three and we realize, wow, now we really have to get organized and figure out. Now we start thinking, hey, should we stagger start times? All these things that we're doing. And that's what we've done really well. So when people come to MBSC, one of the things they always look at is, wow, it's so organized. And it's interesting, but I've got a guy who's been here for 2 weeks from Poland, and he can't believe, I think it's in some ways, it's a little bit of when Toto pulls the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz and they see the little short guy sitting behind there, pulling all the levers and realizing that it's not perfect. And he's saying, well, what about this? Don't you teach them this? Don't you do this? I'm like, no, we don't do that. We're not nitpicking this thing to death. We're not micromanaging it to death. We're running the system, which means if I can get everybody to roll, and if I can get everybody to stretch, and if I can get everybody to warm up, and then if I can get everybody to do a good total body strength program, and I can get everybody to condition, we can have a massive impact without being, I don't know, buried in the minutia. And I think some people look at us because of what we're teaching and think, oh my God, I'm going to go there and everything's going to be perfect and everybody's going to exercise perfectly. And it's like, no, it's very real. And I think the programming, even this book, it's very real. It's like, hey, you want to figure out how to get people in and out, how to process people. Because whether you're a private facility, whether you're a college, whether you're a high school, essentially it's going to come down to, can I process the number of people that I need to process through this facility and then have them do something that's really efficient and really effective?
Absolutely. And I think it's not only for just people who are training athletes or performance gyms, because for me at 5 Iron Fitness, when I opened that, I always had all of your words in my head because it was, okay, when they first walk in, and I was just doing semi-private and 3 to 4 people at a time, but there was 3 mats right when you walked in, a place to change, and 3 mats when you walked in. The next part was you're doing a standing kind of Todd Wright, Gary Gray piece. And then you go out to the hall and you do your little run. Then there's a strength and strength and conditioning stuff in the bigger room. So what you realize is in reality, 3 people aren't going to come at the same time. They never do. Somebody's early, somebody's on time, somebody's late. And so they're moving at different times. So if you don't set that system up, it's not just for athletes. So I think it's funny how we talk about a million times on the show about what lens you're looking through. With the designing the facility, it doesn't always matter what lens, because their flow is just about logistics.
Right.
And
that's,
how
I mean, our business now is more than 50% adult fitness, whatever you want to look at it, small group, semi-private, 1-to-1. But yeah, we are no longer an athlete training business.
Yeah.
And maybe 20 years ago, I might have said that with some sadness in my voice, but it doesn't bother me anymore, because we still train athletes. We have great athletes. We have some of the best athletes in the world. But again, if you think about your impact can be so much greater. We've talked so much about like whether it's the P or TIA stuff or the human stuff. And we're seeing this exercise as medicine piece becoming bigger and bigger all the time, and realizing, wow, I can really drastically impact this aging adult population that's also really affluent. So it's a perfect marriage when you start looking at it and thinking, I've identified this really great customer base that has a very strong interest in staying healthy and has the money to spend to stay healthy. It's a really good business model, amongst many other things.
Yeah, and the brains to say, you know what, wow, or the realization, it's not always about aesthetics anymore. I want to live a little bit longer. I just had kids. My parents, I'm starting to see people pass away, whether for whatever reason, heart attacks in your 40s, et cetera. You start to get this realization that I need to do this for the right reasons. And then, like you said, they're usually have the money.
But you bring up a great point in terms of I don't even think about the aesthetics anymore. It's so infrequent that I think that, oh, wow, somebody's coming in here with I want to get a bigger chest, or I want bigger arms, or that's so not. And I guess there are those people still out there, but that's so not our demographic.
Yeah. It's just not your demographic.
And yet I think that's the majority of that demographic. I look at people now and think I want to be active. I want to be out of pain. I want to live longer. Those are much more the goals that we're seeing now from people than someone coming in with some sort of aesthetic need, in terms of even the fat loss thing. I think the fat loss thing was huge a while ago. And I think we even see less of that. Yes, people would like to lose weight. Yes, they'd like to look better. But I don't see that as the primary driver anymore.
Yeah, not for you guys. I go to Lifetime, and there's still 4 ab machines, and you look down the rows of machines, they have them lined up with abs, shoulders, back, and people are on those because they have so many people that they come in there who don't want training or et cetera, and they're going on these machines, but they're still doing, although I saw a woman today doing decline, sit-ups with like a 25-pound plate. So we are in this bubble. That's a big gym. Obviously, you're known as a sports performance with some changing. It's changing over, but there's definitely, it's still out there.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny. I'm always amazed when I see it, because you're right. We're so, in a way, isolated in terms of, if you came into our gym, people, when they come in, we have no machines really.
Yeah.
In the conventional sense, we have the Kaiser functional trainers.
Yeah.
But beyond the Kaiser functional trainers and some Kaiser cable column machines, there's really no machines. And I think that, again, is off-putting for some people, because they have an expectation when they come in of kind of, where are the machines? If I go to a gym, it's supposed to have machines, and it's supposed to have a bunch of treadmills, and it's supposed to have Stairmasters, and it's supposed to, and they kind of get in our place and look around and think, wow, this place is weird.
Yeah.
These big racks and dumbbells all over the place, and doesn't seem to be much else here.
It's kind of foreign. It's like going to, getting aliens came down, took you somewhere else, right?
That takes you, like we said, chapter 1, right? Facility design. because I honestly think when I look at facilities, that's when I feel good. I think, wow, we've had a really big impact, because it's amazing now. Every facility looks like MBSC. Everybody's private facility looks like MBSC. I see videos all the time and I have to double take to see if it is in fact our facility, because people have copied our layouts, our color schemes, all these things, because they've realized it is efficient, it is effective, it does allow you to make more money, and it does and we talk about this all the time, but we appeal to a certain intellectual level of coach. And this stuff makes sense when you start talking about not buying single station equipment that's going to create bottlenecks in your gym. And we start talking about flow and being able to, how can you flow people through the gym? And to smart people, all that stuff resonates. To some other people, I think it's very much a struggle. And, I have people all the time who think, oh, but, I want a leg extension, or like I said, I want an ab machine, or I want a belt squat, or and I look and think, you guys are crazy. You're creating a bottleneck. You're literally designing your gym to slow down, not to speed up. And I've talked about this all the time. We talked about it the other day in the staff meeting, but I have that I Love Lucy clip that I love, that only those of us probably got to be over 50 to even get the I Love Lucy reference at all. But they're working on the candy assembly line, wrapping candy. And I show it to the staff all the time. And it's like, it's really simple. This is how it works. You just got to wrap the candy, get it in the box, wrap the candy, get it in the box, wrap the candy, get it in the box. Because that's what's ultimately going to lead to our success and or failure. If you can wrap the candy and get it in the box, we're good. If you get in a situation where all of a sudden there's unwrapped candy starting to fall off the end of the thing, or you are putting it in your mouth or your pockets, like Lucy and Ethel were doing, you're in trouble.
Yeah, but Coach, you hit on a really good point. You said those people are coming to you and saying, I want, I want, I want. And I forget the quote Alan used to use, Alan Cosgrove, about, if you could see, through Joe's eyes, then, right. You have to understand what the client is looking through, what
Right.
they're seeing, what they want, what they really want. You could deliver that in a lot of different ways. You could deliver results, and you always said it I remember on the forum, it always came up. You always said, okay, now you're talking about what you want as opposed to what you need.
Right. And I think facility owners do that. I thought when you said it, I thought you were going to talk about facility owners, not the client, but facility owners buy stuff that they want.
Yeah.
It's like, I want a leg extension.
That's what I'm saying. Facility owners.
I think we need,
yeah.
and it's not the client, it's the person, it's the purchaser themselves. And I said, I'll never get a big contract with an equipment company because I'm the worst equipment salesman in the world in terms of, I always tell people, just buy a couple of racks, buy some dumbbells, and find some kind of pulley system that you like, whether it's Kaiser or whether it's Anchor or, whatever it is. It can be free motion cables. I don't care, and then go have at it, because after that, you don't need, and again, there's things that I look at and I think, wow, I would love to have the way we're thinking right now. I'd love to have a line of calf machines. I'd love to have a whole bunch of chest supported rows. If someone said to me, Mike, you can have as much, we're going to give you the whole football field and you can just put whatever you want in there. There is some single station equipment that I would probably buy.
Sure.
Because if someone said, oh, you're never going to run out of space, you can just keep adding. If you need more space, just go further and put more stuff out there. But that's not realistic at all. I had a guy in from New York City today, and he was talking about that in terms of if he had our size space in New York. He said, I'd either be broke or I'd be a billionaire, because, for me to be able to afford this size space. And it's just, you have to, the ability to be effective, whether you're Ben Bruno with a 300 square foot gym in a garage, or whether you're us with a 20,000 square foot gym, what you put in there and how you design it really makes a difference. So that's why, literally, that to me, chapter 1, boom, design the facility, and design the facility so you can get done what you need to get done. Again, not what you want to get done, but what you need to get done. And you were talking, it was funny because you were talking about changes, but one of the things I put in there that was never in there for sprint area. We never put the idea of a sprint area in there. And I said that's the biggest change for us. And that would be the biggest change in the facility design part of this book. And I had another strength coach friend, and I went to visit his facility. And he said, what do you think? New facility. I said, no sprint area, bad move. He said, yeah, it was kind of, it was a little bit after, we realized, and I was like, take stuff out.
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't want to do that, but
Mike, what's your minimum for that? What do you feel like somebody needs a minimum yardage for that?
All right,
we talked about this a couple of
episodes. I'm just trying to think. You'd probably need minimum 20 yards. If you look at Devin, I don't know if you ever remember Devin's old video in his little weight room. He was getting sprints done. They couldn't do flies, but they were running 10s from a standing starter, a 3-point starter, whatever it was, with 10 to sprint and 10 to slow down. And that's probably the minimum. But I'd say to somebody the other day, if someone had less space, I'd be like, run 5s. That's how strongly I feel about sprinting at this point in time. If someone said to me, I only have enough space to run a 5-yard sprint, they'd be like, okay, time 5s, figure out a way to time a 5, and then base everything that you do on the 5 time, not the 10 time or whatever it is. Because I do think it's that powerful. And I saw there was a young coach, a young female coach on Twitter the other day, and I actually have to go back and find the post because I always think I'll remember these things and then I don't. But she said something like 40% of your acceleration comes out of your first 2 steps. And I started thinking, she's probably right. I don't know whose math she was using, but when I look at our situation, I think, yeah, you're right. Because the more we extend the fly out, it doesn't contribute. It doesn't drop the time. The time drops really drastically. When we go from 5-yard fly to 10-yard fly, we get like a 0.1 second drop. When we go from 10 to 15, we get another 0.1 second drop. Or no, actually, we get a 0.05. So that gets cut in half. And then when we go from 15 to 20, some people don't pick up speed at all. So it really shows you the value of those first couple steps. But I need to, her name is Ariana Luther. She's I think she's at University of Miami. But I think she has a track background. But I have to go back and find the post because I think it was 40% in the first 2 steps and 25% in the first 4 or something like that.
I'd like to see also that confirmed, right? We have the technology now. There has to be data on that for sure, right? All right, so we have that piece of it. The pandemic changed a lot of things for you. We've talked about it over the last couple of years, but lately we haven't. From this perspective, from designing the gym, I didn't get to that. Are you recommending this same idea that you're doing now with pods, et cetera?
Yes, same idea. Although not as strictly. I had a chapter written about COVID, or not a chapter, but a section. And then I took it out because I said, okay, this is over. I don't really need to beat this horse again. Yeah. But I do think the one thing that COVID did for us, it made us really appreciate the pod idea even more. And so we're very much still pod 1, pod 2, pod 3, and we flow the workouts much better, and we stop the migration much better. We used to let people kind of wander around more.
Yeah.
Now we're much stricter about, nope. If your group's in pod 1, they're in pod 1, and then they got to make the move at the 10-minute mark and get to pod 2. They've got to be able to, 12-minute mark, whatever it is, like they got to be able to do that. You've got to be able to. It made a flow that was really, really good that much better. So that was a good thing.
The migration. Yeah. I mean, look, Bobby Smith at Ripped, RYPT, Bobby, he can tell you in each section what minute they were at. He's like, from minute 3 to 7, they're here. From 7 to 9, they're here. I mean, they got it dialed in. So same idea. What you're talking about does help kind of figure out.
And we're the same. I mean, especially we do that all the time. We have a time schedule for every section of the workout. Same thing. If someone said, okay, if you ask me, okay, where are they going to be in minute 10? I'd be able to show you. I'd say, okay,
Yeah.
minute 10, they'll be finishing dynamic warm up, and they'll be getting ready to do plyos and med ball.
So,
And
sprinting,
moving their way through.
yeah, sprinting, pods, being more efficient. Anything else that's changed from that first edition?
Yeah, I said don't buy half racks, and then somebody it started that half rack with connectors idea, which I really liked, because now instead of having dead space between racks, and that changed the layout a little bit, because we used to say 10 feet per rack. Now, when you put the connectors in, you need probably more like 14 feet per rack, because the connector takes up a little more space.
Okay.
So I almost thinking it's funny, if I was redesigning it again, I think I'd make the connectors 2 feet shorter.
Okay.
So I would cut them. If I was, Perform Better said, hey, we're gonna redo these, I'd be like, okay, cut those connectors down by 2 feet, because we're losing a little bit of space. But yeah, the racks with connectors, rings in every rack. I don't think we were even doing ring rows at the time I first wrote them. We had probably done inverted rows where we were using, doing them off the bar, and we've put sets of rings in every rack. How we set up the, pod 3 has an 18-inch plyo box there, so you can use it to do one leg squats. 2, you can use it to do explosive step ups off of. You can use it, to put your hand on for rows. Pod 3 also has an adjustable bench in it, so we've got benches in both pod 2 and 3. There's really a lot of little things that are different, but if you kind of look at the basics, if you looked at that chapter in the beginning, and you said, okay, the self-contained power area idea still works. The other thing, actually, integrated platforms. We got rid of our platforms, and our platforms are now basically in the floor. So we don't have raised platforms anymore. That's a big money saver, space saver, trip hazard saver. So these are all the things that we've progressed to since 2005. 2005, we had big, getting platforms, putting them together. It was a real undertaking to get 8 platforms put together and positioned, and they were 2.5, 3 inches off the ground. And now Perform Better's done a great job. Those are inlaid right into the floor, bang. And if you're an Olympic lifting purist, they're thinking, wow, it's not even a platform. It doesn't really absorb shock. But we've always looked at them as they're kind of like placeholders anyway, in terms of you're saying, okay, here's an area where explosive lifting is going to take place.
Yeah.
Just don't walk here.
Keep
But
out.
yeah, the fact that it is regular flooring doesn't really make that big of a difference.
Yeah. Coach, before you even talked about the facility, there's a little piece that says it's not the program, it's the coaching. So talk to me about the really the flow of education. Should we get How to Win Friends, The Art of Coaching, and the language of coaching, first after we get our certification and our degree or whatever, and get our feet wet a little bit, but kind of jump right into that type of stuff? Or, because I remember, believe me, I didn't give Nick Winkleman the idea for what his life was going to be like, but when he was talking, he would call me in 2008 about what are people talking about? What are people talking about on the forum? What are people asking you for on the podcast? And I said, Nick, look, everybody always said you just need to get reps. Coaching is about getting reps and time, and no one teaches you these things. And that's why we started The Art of Coaching on the podcast with Athletes Performance, also so I can make a couple extra dollars. But that was a gap that I personally said we could fill this. Nick, you're talking about this stuff. Nobody's talking about it. So where does that fit in a coach's lifespan?
Well, I think it fits in. I almost think they're puzzle pieces that go together, and you've got to, you can't have one or the other, and you can't use another piece to fill that spot. You can't look, and the way a puzzle works, right? There's only one piece that fits in one spot that makes the picture that you want. So I think that's where kind of the art of coaching and the language and all that stuff fits in with the facility. And what I want people to understand is, I think we've spent too much time as a profession reading Verkhoshansky or reading whatever book and playing with Excel spreadsheets and trying to get the can I get all this stuff on this sheet? Can I get it to look like this? And we're not coaching. And I think that's what I want people to realize. I'd much rather look at someone and say, hey, we did a pretty basic program today. We did some split squats. We did some pressing. We did some chin ups. We did some straight leg deadlift kind of stuff. And we did an explosive exercise. And then we left. But we did it pretty good. And it was pretty organized. And everybody got through it. And everybody got done what they were supposed to get done versus thinking, and again, I see it, sometimes I'll look at people's programming and I'll think, wow, this is way more complicated than it needs to be. One arm, contralateral, bilateral, but like you look at it and think, I got to really kind of look at this, and even figure out what that exercise is because it's got so many names going with it versus, okay, dumbbell row. You can look at dumbbell row and think, all right, I think I know what dumbbell row is. You can look at, one dumbbell straight leg deadlift and pretty much know what that is. And split squat, goblet split squat, bench press. I want people to appreciate the simplicity of this because in some ways, the beauty of it is in that simplicity. The beauty of it is in the idea that, hey, we're not doing anything fancy. We're just going to do it well. We're going to do it really efficiently. We're going to do it correctly. And then we're going to move on. And I think as a profession, we can get a little fascinated with ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, I tell you, when you put that stuff down and I know working with adults, I was training a guy this morning who sometimes adults, they get a little bit sidetracked. It's not their only world, their only thing that they have going on in their life where they're going to just playing golf or just playing hockey or whatever. And so many times I got to make sure I am in the moment. Like, for example, I was using Joe Banyai's strap, right? The what's that strap? And we were doing some load and explodes, and he'll just start talking and he'll do the exercise and forget to turn his hips, for example, all the way. Like, hey, let's go. So like I have to be there so much. And I find if I'm sitting there worried about writing it down, what the weight is and all that crap, I'm just not, you're not dialed in like you should be coaching and being there and present and being dynamic and touching them and moving them and making sure you're kind of, maybe throwing a little bit of motivational stuff in there once in a while. But I think it's important. And you guys have been showing that on your mic'd up stuff. I like that. Some of your coaches.
Yeah, some of them have done a really good job. And that's how they are. I mean, we're constantly on them about better demos, about better cues. It never stops. Because again, for us, it is about you're trying to mass produce this. You're trying to do this on a really big scale over and over again, day to day, day in, day out. So you've got to be able to do it well, and you've got to have coaches that have good energy. And like you said, the energy has to be consistent. They can't get distracted. We have to tell people things, don't get lost talking to one person in the group when you got 8 people in the group. You got to keep moving up and down the line. You got to keep, and we talk about the idea. Even I remember, Brendan talked in his book about, the power of 3. You want to make sure you address everybody 3 times, ideally during the time in that group. We have one of the girls today, Christina, who I love, but Christina does everything really right, and she doesn't have any injuries. So I kind of ignore her. I always go up and say, "Hey, Christina, I just want to say hi, good morning, because you're awesome, but you don't require much attention. You're like a flower that's growing perfectly. Like everything's going exactly the way it's supposed to go. And I got these ones over here that maybe are wilting a little bit that I got to pay more attention to." But I make a point every day of saying that to her and just kind of making her laugh and chuckle a little bit. Like, yeah, don't worry about me.
Yeah.
I don't need a whole lot.
You acknowledged her. So
Yeah.
it's like kids, like you always got to pay attention to the one that's like kind of messing up. Or in my house,
oh yeah,
nobody paid attention to me, Mike. I was a middle child. I was a good kid. And, my brothers were maniacs. And so they got all the attention.
Yeah.
Damn middle child syndrome.
Yep. I was the middle too. Same thing.
So Mike,
yes.
By the way, who are the best coaches? Bartenders, right? Are we right? Us, Todd, right? I mean, come on.
True.
You got to talk to 8 people at once.
Yeah. And you got to be able to work while you're doing it. Because if you're not working,
Absolutely.
you're not making any money.
Nope. They'll call
So
you
even
out.
if you're a good talker, if you're a good, like, lean on the bar talking guy, you better be at a slow bar. So you got to be able to, we used to always say, you got to be able to pump it out. You got to be able to, when the bar gets busy, you got to be able to go. And then you still got to be able to smile at your regulars and make sure that the people, somebody is looking for something, you got to be able to get it to them.
Absolutely. And the lesson, I don't know how I could translate this to the gym, but I always said to people, don't in the bar, you don't always have to worry about remembering their name, but if you remember their drink, man, they feel like a VIP, right? So if you can find something in the gym that, hey, I know you like this protein drink or whatever. I don't know.
But that's their kids. That's their injuries. We talk about that stuff all the time. I always get compliments from clients on the fact that, you always remember. I can't believe you remember that I had hurt my knee, or I can't believe you remember that, this was bothering me. And I try to make a point of kind of hitting those people up. How's your knee? How's your shoulder? How's everything? Are you getting what you need? And they're always impressed by the fact that I remember. Whereas I look at it and think, shit, that's my job to remember. I better remember. But
yeah, it's interesting because that is you would think normally that would make common sense. But unfortunately, as you said early in the book, Voltaire, common sense is not very common. Coach, let's wrap it up with really just from the perspective of programming. Just put a nice bow on really in general, maybe your philosophy on programming and maybe how it's changed over these 17 years.
Well, programming hasn't really changed. We're not really doing that much differently. But then when I look at it, I think we are, because the speed part has really changed. We weren't sprinting like we were sprinting. The power part has changed. We've made some subtle changes in our plyo programs. We've made some subtle changes. Trap bar jumps have become a big thing for us, for people that maybe can't Olympic lift. I think when you look at, if you kind of said knee dominant, hip dominant, push, pull, I didn't spend a huge amount of time in the book on that stuff because I didn't think it was a big deal. I think I spent some more time on conditioning because I wanted to talk. There's quite a bit of stuff about sled work. There's quite a bit of stuff about the assault bike. So I think I went into more detail about things. It's the things that were different that really are driving this book. So when I was back rewriting the book, I was looking at, okay, what do I look at in the first version and say, oh, wow, either that's missing, or that needs to be upgraded, or that needs to be, I don't know, reframed. And from a program standpoint, really how we program probably hasn't changed that much. If you look at it, though, I've said foam rolling, 2004, we weren't doing it. So 2005, we probably weren't doing it. So that's something. So I think the section on mobility and warm up, that's a little bit different, but it's interesting. I would look at it and think, to me, the changes are subtle. Someone else might read it and think, oh my God, I haven't been there since 2005. It's really drastic. I can't believe the differences. And I think that's the difference between being in it every day and looking at it and thinking, wow, maybe I interned at MBSC in 2005 or 2006, and I'm still kind of programming that way. They might look at it and think, ooh, a lot of difference. There in 2016 might say, a couple things.
Yeah. It sounds like the old thing, you kept the same principles. It's all about principles. You've changed the tactics within those each area. There's just been some minor changes. Obviously, we talk a lot about your changes as we go here, but it's good to see it all in one book. I'll remind everybody, it is Designing Strength Training Programs and Facilities, second edition, brand new. We'll have links for that. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Target, right? On Target.
Yep, on Target. Yep.
Yeah. The best, Larry Draper.
Larry is the best.
So, Coach, thanks for doing this. Just kind of give us an overview, spending a little extra time with us today on this. So, congrats on finally finishing this book. I did one last question. Advances in Functional Training. Is that the next new edition?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
I don't know if I'll do it again. Although that has crossed my mind, but I had said this was my last book, so we'll see.
Here's the thing. I think what you should do is you got 4 little minions now that are business partners, right? They could write the same shit. They've been spewing Mike Boyle stuff for 15
You're
years,
probably
right? And each of them have to edit like 15 of those articles that are in advances, and you'll approve them, and then you send them to Larry. That's our new thing. They'll appreciate that too from me.
All right. We'll see how we do on this book first.
All right, Coach. Thanks again for doing this.
I'll see you.
All right, take care. All right, that's going to do it for episode 359 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Guys, the show notes are located at continuefit.com or strengthcoachpodcast.com. Don't forget, you can try the new strengthcoach.com out for 7 days for free. Go to strengthcoach.com for that offer. Special thanks to Chris Parrier and the folks over at Perform Better. I did an episode all on the Summits last episode, so 358.5. Check that out. Don't forget right now, the online sale, 50% off a bunch of stuff, bumper plates, kettlebells, and dumbbells. Like I said, last episode, we talked all about the summit dates and the presenters and everything that's new. It's going to be Orlando in a couple of weeks, Chicago, Long Beach, and Providence. Take advantage of early bird specials and hotel discounts, guys, at each location. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle for coming on, talking about designing strength training programs and facilities, the second edition. Check out our anniversary issue I did with Coach Boyle, 40 mistakes, 40 years. There's a link to access that at strengthcoachpodcast.com. Thanks to Sumit Seth and Naamly, helping build relationships through personalized communication. So your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on your free 30-day trial. Thanks to AG1 from Athletic Greens. Visit athleticgreens.com/StrengthCoach to get your free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today. That's going to do it for this episode. My name is Anthony Renna. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.